Hi, I'm James McGuire, editor of Datamation, and our topic today is big data, current and future trends. To talk about that, we've got four great experts. With us is Arijit Sengupta, CEO of BeyondCore. Hello to you, Arijit.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fantastic. And I know you don't have your little lower third there, but we know you are the CEO of BeyondCore. Tell us in a nutshell, what does BeyondCore do?
So we automate analytics. So we made it possible for any business user to be able to say, I want to understand how this revenue number, cost number, or risk number in my data behaves. So you just go in and say, what's affecting my product sales? And it'll come in and tell you, well, you're doing in Boston for men, but not for women.
Gotcha. Okay. Also with us is Joelle Kaufman, head of marketing at Bloomberg. Hello to you, Joelle.
Hi, everybody.
And what does Bloomberg specialize in the world of big data?
Yeah, Bloomberg specializes in using big data to help website owners, particularly in e-commerce, get found from off their site, drive discovery of the right, most actionable, valuable content on their site, and identify how they can improve their customers' experience using their content and products in a way that's more intuitive to your customers, all driven by amazingly large amounts of real-time data on products, people, and web-wide demand.
Makes sense. There in the hat is Mr. Mike Matchett, a senior analyst and consultant with the Tenasia Group. Hello to you, Mike.
Yep. Hi. Yep. Yep. So I cover.
Yes, please tell us.
Oh, I cover big data, storage, systems management, and a raft of topics that constellate around enterprise IT infrastructure. So, looking forward to talking about many and varied aspects of big data today.
And is that more of like a Revolutionary War cap, or is that actually a pirate's hat? Just so we know.
So this is actually colonial. This is actually a colonial tricorner,
Yeah.
which is because I'm here in New England. But
Sure.
pirates also wore something like this. Yes.
Okay. That would have been in like 1780. That would have been very fashionable, probably.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Are you saying not today?
You know, why not? Also with us is Richard Whitehead, evangelist in chief at Moogsoft. And Richard, what do you evangelize about, and what does Moogsoft do?
Okay. What Microsoft does is we're using unsupervised machine learning and social collaboration technologies to help IT organizations, IT operations teams, manage some of the largest IT infrastructures in the world. Companies like Yahoo and some large banks and telecommunications companies.
Sounds great. So I want to ask the four of you, I mean, as you're out in the field when you're talking to either clients or other experts, you know, what are some big trends that everyone's talking about? Is it machine learning, social collaboration, Internet of Things, or, and take your pick on how you want to answer the question, is there a sense of disenchantment out there? I pick up this a little bit. People go like, well, big data, you know, it's a lot of buzz, it's a lot of money, we're not really getting much from it, we're kind of tired of the whole idea. Do you hear any of that, or what do you hear when you're talking to experts out there? Joelle, what's your sense of that? What's big out there today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there is a challenge among the business users, the so what challenge, the what do I know and why is it so hard? You know, they hear about data and big data and having lots of data, but they're not easily able to make better decisions. And at the end of the day, they don't care about algorithms and they don't care about volumes of data. They care about making decisions that drive their business and making decisions that are predictive. And so we hear people really clamoring for answers rather than data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Internet of Things, beacons, are increasing the volume of data. And what is challenging to keep up is what is that data telling me to do differently, and do I believe it?
You use the term beacons. Is that? I mean, I don't hear that much. Tell me about beacons.
Well, beacons, and maybe it's because we do a lot in the e-commerce, but beacons is the ability to know where somebody is in a physical store while they're on their phone, and then use that information to create a more compelling physical experience. If you think about it, the first wearable is the phone, right? That I'm wearing it on my person.
Right.
I walk into any sort of business, and if there is something about where I'm standing and what I'm doing on the phone that can give me a better experience or give your sales associate a better experience, companies want to do that, but it's very hard to actually get all of that data, and it's so big, and synthesize it to precisely what will have the best impact right now. And that's what business people care about. What do I need to do today, tomorrow, to grow and maximize my business? What's historical is only moderately interesting if it doesn't tell me what to do tomorrow.
Right. Arish, what are you hearing when you talk to clients or other business experts about big data? What are the big topics that is on everyone's mind these days?
Yeah, so I would have to agree with the previous speaker, because the problem is with the term big data. We are focusing on data, the size of the data, rather than what you're doing with the data. So it's like, and by the way, I see Richard up on screen while I'm speaking, so there's something interesting going on there.
I see you up on screen, but
okay.
anyways, yeah.
But part of the issue here is it's about, as she said, the insights you can glean from the data. Bragging about big data is like bragging about how much junk you have in the attic, right? It's not about how much data you store, it's what you've done with it. And this is precisely why a lot of companies are getting into trouble now, where they've spent tens of millions into building infrastructure for big data. But you go and ask them, how many millions of dollars did you impact your profit by or your revenue by? Forget about billions. They can't even come up with numbers in the millions because they haven't tracked it. The next phase is going to be all about how do I deliver several $million of quantified ROI in a matter of hours and days. If you can do that, you will succeed. If you can't, you're just throwing stuff into an attic.
Richard, what do you hear out there? I mean, is there a talk about the cloud-based BI? I hear buzz about that, and we had talked about that a little bit. Is that hot these days? Cloud-based versus on-premise?
I'm certainly going to echo one of Joel's comments that people don't want to hear about algorithms, and they're not interested in k-means clustering and things like that. Where they get excited is when you talk to them about practical applications, such as is it possible to cluster negative sentiment that you're picking up from tweets and comparing that against the response time and infrastructure issues with a large web-based presence.
Is it possible to do that?
It is possible to do that, yes, using natural language processing.
Okay.
The other trend that I'm noticing is we get a lot of questions when we talk about this kind of technology to people. A lot of questions are, where should I do this processing? Is this something I should do on-premise, or is this something that should be done in the cloud?
Mm-hmm.
The answer, of course, is actually very simple.
What is your answer to that, if it's a simple answer?
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that question? It seems like it would come down to dollars and cents, but what's your what is your nutshell answer to that one?
The answer will change over the next few years, but right now the quick answer is you process the data where the data is today. So try and avoid moving it around too much is the answer.
So if I can add on that, I think it depends on what kind of data you're processing, and are you, in our case, we're collecting and using data from 75 million consumers across hundreds of sites. And when you get insights from our Compass product, you're benefiting from the algorithms being tuned by data of that magnitude. There's no way to get that on-premise.
So Joel, your sense of the cloud versus on-prem, you're leaning heavily towards the remote part of that answer.
Well, no, I think that Richard's answer is accurate. You don't want to move data around. This is big, massive, and there's issues there. But it depends on what data you're using and what question you're trying to answer. If you can answer the question with the data you have yourself in your locations, great for you. Do it there.
Right.
But to answer the question, you need data that comes from beyond you. Then the on-premise is a non-starter. You're going to have to be dealing with the cloud.
Right.
I actually think there's a very strange black and white thing we're talking about here. You don't have to suck the elephant through the straw into the cloud to analyze it. There are modern techniques now, and I'm surprised nobody's bringing this up, where you can do statistical measurements where the data is move those statistical profiles to the cloud, and these statistical profiles are typically 100 to 1,000 the size of the data, and then do secondary analysis. You may even have some of the data on-prem, some of the data on the cloud, and you combine it on the cloud. The key point here is don't try to move the elephant through the straw, measure the elephant and move the measurements through the straw. And it can be a both answer. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I agree. Don't put elephants through straws or doorways or anything like that. I think that depending on the problem you're trying to solve, and can the algorithms, can the machine learning happen just off of statistical samples, or does it need data in order to generate the actual statistical accuracy?
I didn't say statistical samples. You wouldn't want to use samples in a big data context. I said statistical profiles. So you still look at every row and every column of data, but you look at how the data behaves rather than what the data says. And you can usually express how data behaves in mathematical models without having to move the whole data over.
Mike, what's your sense of how to access the elephant? I mean, do you need to bring him where you are? Can you access them remotely, or in a larger sense, what do you hear when you talk to clients and experts out there?
Yeah, so I think there's many different aspects to big data that we're looking at. Obviously, we've had discussion here perhaps on some vertical applications. In the broader enterprise IT sense, I think people have lots of different kinds of data. Big data has definitely gotten overhyped in a certain way, and I think that was a failure of people to go out and try to sell big data as having one key killer application that you had to build these huge clusters for. And what we're seeing lately are, I would say, a segmentation of the big data space down into practical solutions. So one of those might be hosting on-premise a virtualized version of Hadoop where I can look at spin up different clusters very quickly and look at different subsets of data very fast and do that department by department. Or I can go to a cloud and spin up a cluster and bring that down very fast and look at that. Another one might be different ways of storing the data. You said not to move the data around very much. We're seeing people now being able to process their data in a big data way in place on their traditional storage arrays. Again, maybe using some virtualization or remote access to their the places where the data already lives without having to actually move it into a big data special storage cluster. And this is talking about people's own data. Certainly when you then combine it with data outside, there are other considerations about moving data around and where does the processing take place. So I think there's a lot of change happening in the big data space. I also haven't heard anybody talk about a trend we're seeing with moving towards a more real-time operational intelligence kind of focus. Maybe Joel mentioned this a little bit, where instead of a couple of years ago we were talking about big data in a almost as a replacement for data warehousing and business intelligence. Now we're talking about it in terms of operational intelligence, where we want to pull data out in a more streaming, real-time way and do it very, very quickly and effectively to impact what I'm doing right now and not what I might be doing, what I did 3 days ago. So I guess that does echo some of the things we heard.
Yeah, I would have to completely agree.
Go ahead, Richard. Yeah.
IT operations, we live and breathe in the real-time operations world, so processing time is measured in milliseconds and seconds for us, and it is our goal to provide actionable data to individuals in near real time as possible. So it's the real-time sliding window view. We're finding that the traditional big data approach of filling a very large data lake and then doing some forensic analysis, the folks we're talking to don't have that luxury. They need information in near real time so they can take actions or head off disasters and make appropriate sort of, changes to try and realize the dream of autonomic networks. So real-time processing is the key here, and we also agree. I think it's a 3 to 5 year time frame, but there's going to be more processing done at the perimeter and less centralized data warehousing, which is, I guess, the current trend.
Right.
So if I can talk to this issue of putting the decision making, one of our products deals with digital merchandisers, and they're not. They want to be very data driven. There isn't a lot of centralized, aggregated data for them. They're not BI people, and one of our clients told us, and this is a positive big data story, that during the week of Cyber Monday, Black Friday,
Right.
Terrific Thursday, that traditionally it took them 4 weeks to collect all the data to understand what was happening and what worked and what didn't. But because they were using a big data-driven solution, happens to be in the cloud, but their access to it, they're going right through their browser. Their digital merchandisers were able to see and make changes in real time to improve their performance in that incredibly important week of sales. And for them, not only was it positive to their business performance, but the actual people felt considerably better about their jobs because they had the information from which to make better decisions in the time frame it mattered, which I think echoes Richard's point of view. But rather than on the IT side, this is on the actual end user digital merchants.
It's sort of like the democratization of big data, where maybe it's only the C-suite, but what you're talking about is perhaps a lower rank of people can access it, or maybe it's a faster process.
Oh no, it's not C-suite. This is really designed for the operator, the person who's got to make the decisions about what's going to be in what position on this page, what's going to be promoted, what's going to be demoted, and what are we going to stop doing. So it's very much, there's a whole business theory of you want the decisions to be made by the person closest to the information to make the decisions. And done well, if you can use big data, algorithms, whatever, and bring the right information to the right person in the moment they need to make a decision, then you can track very dramatic, measurable impacts on the business and very emotionally positive impacts on the person.
Mm-hmm. What about the idea, and Mike, you talked about this a little bit, the idea of making it really practical, and Joelle, you touched on this. And there is that disenchantment about big data. It's not happening for us. It's more a buzz than reality. How do we turn that into actionable insights? How do businesses really get actionable insights from big data? If you were going to give one piece of advice to them, what would you say? Or how do we turn this into real insight?
To extend from what Joel was saying, actually, it fits right into what you were saying. You have to bring the insights to the people who understand the data best, right? So think about how people are trying to solve this problem today. I have business users who have years of domain knowledge about the space and what they're doing, and now I bring in this data scientist who understands statistics, perhaps, but doesn't understand the business. Real example, we were looking at product defects for one of the largest manufacturers in the world. It's a Fortune 100. And we look at this product which has a high defect rate, and the software says the defect rate is high because of 3 customers and 3 countries. Now the product owner was in the room. She says those 3 customers are mining customers. Those 3 countries have a high air quality problem. My product has a big fan in it. Could it have been an air quality problem all along? Now see just what happened there. You needed that human expert to know that those 3 customers were mining customers. Maybe a data scientist would have known that. But the data scientist definitely wouldn't have known that that product has a big fan in it and that it could have been caused by air quality problems. Today, what we are trying to do is give the power to the people who have this mechanics of statistics and computer science. And what we are seeing happen, and you'll see this conversation about citizen data scientists becoming more and more important, is how do you take those tools and techniques and empower the business users to be able to use it themselves so that now they get the best of both worlds, those years of domain knowledge and all the statistical and computational power that they need.
Richard, your sense on making this all actionable, how does it go from just this sort of a fairy tale to something that really produces profit?
Well, it's all about the people. That was a really good comment. What we're doing is we're leveraging social networking technology to connect the people that count to the data. So an example would be when we're processing information, and it's not always using an analytics to create computationally derived data. Sometimes it's just looking for the data that already exists and connecting that to the right person. So we'll look for particular pieces of information, and then we'll categorize that data and say, who needs to see this, and then use that technology to link it to the appropriate person. And that's basically the soundbite there, is connecting the data to the people.
And on that note, it never fails to amaze me. I think this less now than I used to think this, but it seems like one of the ironies of big data is that it still comes down to this human element. I think, as it was originally presented, it's going to be the source of information that machines and software could give us, but in reality, there's still a lot of human hunches going on there, less so perhaps now than in the past. But at any rate, Mike, your sense of making this all actionable, or whether or not humans are still needed in big data?
James, allow me to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Add your thought, if you would.
James, the thing you were just saying was very crucial. What big data is doing the computation so that the insights can be brought to the human, so they can look at a small set of actionable insights, right? Think back to Yahoo versus Google. Yahoo was categorizing the web by using human beings to go figure that out, and Google came in, and actually Alta Vista, all these guys came in and said, I'm going to use algorithms to bring it down to a list of 10 links, and now the human will choose from those 10 links. You're still putting human intuition in there, but when they're selecting from the 10 links. But you're letting computers bring it down from billions of possibilities down to the first 10, then the next 10, the next 10 links. That's what big data is going to do. It's going to let you look at billions of things and bring it down to a list of human tractable patterns which are statistically sound, and now the human picks from them. So you empower the human. You don't say the human is irrelevant.
I could not agree more. Yeah, we see this all the time. The data, the role of the technology is to prioritize and synthesize massive amounts of information into something that is digestible for humans, for people, and then people's expertise will choose what to do from within that, and also by giving feedback can help the machine learn how to give better suggestions to the expert. And I think that it's very silly to think, like, machines are great at math and identifying patterns and what have you. They're not particularly intuitive. They don't have a sense of design and of emotion. And that's very big in the human experience.
Joel, when the machines finally take over 10 years from now, that comment will be remembered, and they may be upset at you. So
they wouldn't be the first.
Mike, how do we make this all actionable? How do we make it really real?
Well, so I think we've touched on a couple of the pieces here. You definitely want to try to not make the process dependent upon a key data scientist. You don't want to make the process batch-oriented. You don't want to make it that. What you want to do is try to bring actionable intelligence to the people who are actually making operational decisions. So you're going to make the process faster. You got to do more things in memory. You've got to have more applications predefined. We touched a little bit on machine learning. Machine learning is evolving. I mean, I remember studying artificial intelligence 30 years ago, and it just doesn't go anywhere for a couple of the reasons we talked about here, but also because the expectations were that it would think like a human. And machines don't think like humans. Machines think like machines, and they have their strengths and weaknesses. And yes, if you're trying to help a human make an operational decision, there's got to be a human in the loop there. Otherwise, it already would have been automated. And so I think that the challenge is, today we see an awful lot of startups saying, I can use big data on the back end as part of my construction of my service, and I'm going to bring that key piece of advisory intelligence to the audience who's actually doing something. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those solutions coming to market where the end user may not even be aware there's big data there. And in fact, one of the predictions we made is that big data will really be successful when no one talks about it anymore. When it's not, you don't think about it as I have to look at big data. It's just more data that somebody's processing for you, and it kind of normalizes to the background. So we see a lot of trends going in that direction. I think those are all good things that are going on. One of the, just to mention a few of the obstacles that we see, touching on there, data governance is still an issue when we talk about large data sets. Privacy issues are still an issue when we talk about large data. Being able to use big data to actually put personally identifying information back into data sets that may have already been cleaned up of that information. You can actually just rediscover personally identifying information, which is kind of one of the things that it hasn't been fully addressed yet. And so I think there's some issues that yet to have to be overcome. The bigger the data gets, but we're getting there. There's definitely a lot of evolution in the space.
I don't want us to take too much time this morning. There's one question I definitely want to fit in because I want to look to the future on this. If you look ahead, 1, 3, 5 years from now, where is big data going? And I guess businesses are wondering that because they want to know how to invest in this. Richard, what would you say to people if they want to know where is big data going to be 36 months from now, and how would that influence the way I'm going to invest in this? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think the point there is, if you shouldn't necessarily be focusing on big data as a thing. It's not an initiative. It's just a tool, and that's basically the thing there. And it's an enabling tool. So you need to take a step back and look at your business more holistically and say, now I have this capability. I have this fantastic tool. Where should I be applying it? And if your business is Internet of Things and connected devices, it's clearly an enabler. Retail obviously they've jumped on the technology very quickly. They understand the power and the benefit of connecting individual stores and human activity and using that data. And likewise with other organizations as well, telecommunications organizations, banks, they're taking a step back and saying, how can I leverage this technology and make my business more fluid and efficient?
Joel, what does your crystal ball tell you about where this is all going, say, 3 to 5 years from now?
My guess is the gentleman who said, if people aren't going to talk about big data. They're going to talk about, the tools they have to do their job. They're going to move beyond. I mean, something like 70–80% of businesses are run on Excel spreadsheets or maybe Google spreadsheets, but instead of being run on a spreadsheet, they're going to be running on purpose-built applications that answer specific, repetitive, ongoing problems so that they can focus on doing better. And I think that it's just going to become more and more specific.
So you're talking about almost a niche application as opposed to this big sort of genie-like thing that we can ask a deep question of and it can crunch it, almost like Watson. Watson is this paradigm for big data. So it's going to be less about Watson than it is this sort of a niche application that can answer one specific question for us.
So if you think about what Watson is, people build applications on Watson to answer specific questions. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, we have not yet built a machine, maybe Anjit knows of one, that you can throw any question and it will come up with a reasonable answer. That, Google's trying to do that. But with the Google search, but there is no way to be that generic because the math, the things, the weights of different pieces of data, the statistical profiles that matter are different for different questions. Anjit?
Okay, so I got to take this one. So, 2 examples. Sears looking at retail data. 5 minutes. So never looked at their data, never knew their questions, analyzed in 5 minutes. McKinsey looking at 30 million patients, looking at healthcare cost increases, never looked at the data. 2 hours, it was 30 million patients, million variable combinations. HP, invoice discrepancy. Now, unless you're telling me there's something common between invoice discrepancy, patient health records, and Sears' retail, I would say absolutely it is possible for technology to do everything. In fact, I loved it when you were talking about Excel. The problem is people think it's harder than it is. Yes, it took us 8 years of research to build it, but now what we have done is you can go into Word and PowerPoint and choose a big data source. You can choose a Hadoop repository. You can choose SAP HANA and just say, well, tell me about revenue. Or tell me
you can go into Word and access Hadoop. Work me through this one. This is new to me.
So this just got released. You probably saw an announcement 2 weeks back from BeyondCore and Microsoft called BeyondCore App for Office, where you could do data from Excel and analyze it and put it into Word and PowerPoint with a click. Okay. So it tells you the story of your data, creates the slides and everything. So then we had one of our biggest partners in big data come to us and say, can't you just point it at our big data source? So we just built that, and it's getting announced in 2 weeks at a conference. But the point is, all you're doing in Word or PowerPoint is pointing yourself at a big data repository and saying, this variable is what I want to understand. And Bianca will create all the graphs, all the interpretations of the graphs, the slideshow, and it'll do it in a matter of minutes. So it is possible. It is difficult to believe these kinds of things, which is why we had to have 24 of the Fortune 100 use what we do before people started believing it. Sorry, I rose to your beat. I had to take that one.
That's right. I agree that there are some types of questions that are asked and can be done that way, and there are a whole host of other questions that can't, that require you to understand what does it mean that somebody clicked on this, searched for that, and then ultimately bought this.
Right.
These are not generic, common repeatable questions, and they aren't done with the same algorithm that you might use to understand how different patients were treated. We're not looking for trend lines. We're not looking for things that you present in PowerPoint. We're looking at very, very specific kinds of questions. So I'm sure that there are many things that can be done more generically, but can be done, and it's very powerful. But I'm also pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of rather specific data sets that one can't just access, and rather specific predictive technologies that are optimized for specific types of industries.
So the first phase of analytics that you're talking about was all about what data says. What does this label mean? The next phase is about what data does. So one of the fun things I do is people believe this is not possible, so we go in and change the word gender to fruit and male to pineapple and female to tomato. And the software will happily say when fruit is pineapple, this is what happens. What it's doing is saying when this thing happens, I see that thing happen. And it can do predictive models from it, descriptive models from it. It's a different paradigm, and this is not just BeyondCode doing it. Other companies are trying to do it too. We're just a few years ahead. But this exists today, so it's easy to prove it.
Well, every morning when I go to Google News and I read the news about cloud computing. And to this day, for that particular search continues to confuse actual cloud computing news with cloud news, as in weather, cloud, things in the sky. Even though I've done that same search, for like 500 days in a row, and I'm thinking Google algorithm still mixes up cloud in the sky with cloud computing. I feel like we're still at the beginning of all this. That's my point, which may or may not relate to what you're talking about, but that's a personal experience I had.
Example, James.
First, James.
Please, Mike.
If I could.
Yes, and tell us about the future while you're at it. Did we lose Mr. Matchett?
No. I guess I was confused on what I was hearing. First, James, if you do something 500 days in a row and it still doesn't work, I think that's kind of the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
So you might want to tune that search.
Yes.
You might want to tune that search a little bit and put some minus.
Right, and the thing is, I search for cloud, not cloud computing, so I'm being a lazy searcher, but I want them to realize that on those 500 days, I've always clicked on cloud computing links, so don't they realize, hey, this individual does not want cloud news. But anyways, go on.
All right, well, which also brings up where's big data going 3 to 5 years from now? I think one of the frontiers yet, and we're sort of dancing around the edges of what's causation and what's correlation, and can we turn correlation into causation? And that's not even a big data problem. That's just been an ever-present data statistical machine learning problem. I think another problem we have is transparency. Google getting sued by the EU to say, hey, we don't understand what your search algorithm is really doing and recommending to us. It goes a little bit to Joel too, who says, while I can give someone an operational piece of intelligence and advice, if I haven't been able to explain how I built that and I don't have the transparency to actually dig in to understand why I'm getting that advice, maybe I'm being manipulated, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm being steered in the wrong direction subtly to go in a different direction. I think we're going to see all these problems written big with big data, and I think that's kind of what we're going to be doing the next 3 to 5 years, is trying to straighten that all out and do it with some more advanced work, like what's going on with some of the other panelists here. So I also like to see, I'm also expecting to see more clearinghouses of more broader data sets out there where people can go and get their hands on larger, more public available data. I think that's going to be a big thing, and combine it with data that they have. and also publish data that they have in a more secure manner, and that they know it's not going to be misused.
Well, that would suggest there's going to be big data aggregators out there that'll make a business out of building those clearinghouses.
And I think there already are. If you look at some people with data sources that you can go and subscribe to, you can. And some of them are media companies, James. So
I'll try to pay attention to that.
Yeah, yes. Some of them will do that. I think we're going to see more large-scale graph kinds of databases, and people talking more about that. We've gotten away from talking about relational databases and talking about big data in some unstructured search kind of way. We're going to start talking more about related data because it's a more natural way to model a lot of scenarios and find relationships. And I think we're going to definitely see more machine learning come to play and done at a big scale. So it's not just going to be Watson. We're going to have things baked into our Internet of Things, and the edge devices will get smarter and start to make operational decisions on their own without us being in the loop. So
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that, Dave.
Yeah. Or more likely, no, your house should be this temperature. No, I'm too hot. No,
Right,
you're wrong.
right.
It's
Yeah.
going to be this temperature.
I think that's a really important point, and that's the key thing here is to keep people in the loop. This is when we talk about the technology being a black box. Here's some data, here's some processing, and there's your output. The reality is these are tools, and these are part of a living, breathing sort of organic system. So when we look at the impact of the technology as it applies to our customers, it can be very transformative, right through from discussing what the data is and how do we implement algorithms to actually do the day-to-day crunching of the data, right through to the impact of the social collaboration side of things. Now you've connected people to this data. We actually have one customer who's redesigning their floor plan and moving desks around because of the impact of the social side of the process. So, and also taking feedback as well. The algorithm doesn't live in a vacuum. When you see this data, when you see the fact that you've received some information about weather, you have the opportunity to go in. Tools should be provided to allow the user to go back in and tune the data and say, okay, this is very interesting. This correlation that you've come up with is very interesting, but it has no operational impact or value. So please don't show it to me again. And that functionality should be built into the system because you have to connect it to the people and people in purpose.
Sounds good. People and purpose. We're going to have to watch as time goes on. I appreciate the four of you and your expertise. I will send you a link. We can all tweet it. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent.